Hey guys, this is Adrian from the Sound of Accra Podcast, and I wanted to shoot this short video just to share with people why I started the podcast and how I came up with the idea, as this is such a frequently asked question. So some of you may know that when I was in university, I used to study music technology, and I also ran my own radio show called In the Mix. So this was an urban radio station focused on playing R&B and hip-hop music. We had live interviews and guests on the show, and we even did blind dates as well on the show, which was quite funny. So really and truly, when I did that show, it won some awards. It was pretty successful, and I had people even finding flyers at the university about the radio show across the country, which is really amazing. And what happened was, after radio, I had one of my best friends tell me, "Hey Adrian, you should get into radio. Like, you were really good at radio and you should get a career in radio." And I said, well, there's not much money in radio, so I'm gonna stick to what I'm doing. So obviously years went by, and of course back then at university, when I got my first ever iPhone, which is the iPhone 3GS, I'm sure you guys remember that chunky iPhone, I've discovered podcasting for the first time, and I'd subscribed and I started listening to podcasts for the first time ever in 2010. I also came up with my own podcast accidentally on the back of my own radio show called In the Mix, and the name of the podcast was called In the Views, which was a play on the word interviews. And the reason why it was called In the Views, because this particular podcast was based on interviewing guests or students outside of the show, where I could create some new content segments for the actual radio show, the live radio show that is. So basically what happened was that I created this podcast without even realizing it back then, and I really enjoyed it. I would go around campus and I would interview students with a dictaphone, ask them about, different things like healthy eating, different things about technology, and different things about university. So time went on back then, and eventually I stopped doing radio, but while it was good, it did really well. So fast forward to 2019, I was listening to a audio clip or a video clip, and the light bulb just went off. I heard someone say the sound of something, and I was like, wait a minute, that would be a great idea for a podcast, the Sound of Accra. So some of you may also know that I also used to host annual events in airports in Accra called Diaspora Connect. Now, Diaspora Connect was a simple networking event where people from around the world, namely the diaspora and native Ghanaians and Africans across the continent, could come together and we could just do nothing but networking, no other agendas whatsoever. So I ran this event twice between 2018 and 2019, and it got a bit more success the second time I ran it. But this time, the second time I ran it, I felt like I wanted the conversation to continue, that I wanted to be able to continue the whole networking experience. So I came up with this idea to start a podcast where I could continue to interview people from the African continent, mainly in the areas of entrepreneurship and the creative sector, just about what they do. And then I also had another light bulb moment that there's a lot of content out there on YouTube regarding Ghana and business, entrepreneurship, you name it. But there was no one really doing anything in the podcast space. I mean, there was a couple of people, there was no one really mainly flying the flag for Ghana on a consistent basis that was really pulling out this kind of content as a podcast. So I thought, let me be this person, let me tap into this space. So I found my niche, the Sound of Accra Podcast. Now I remember the first day that I went to shoot my first ever guest, who is Bontui Anyete, and today that's one of my most popular episodes to date. And I remember being in an Uber, and I had to think of a catchy hook in order to get the listeners hooked into what the podcast was all about, so that they would listen to it. So I remember just brainstorming, and eventually, just before I got to the venue in airport, I came up with the perfect hook. of course, which you guys already know, which is we chat with colorful creatives and entrepreneurs from a Ghanaian background or interest. So that was the hook I came up with, and of course we made history and we recorded the first ever episode of The Sound of Accra in January 2020, and of course today we've come a long way. Now this is the light bulb moment for me, is that when I first shared my first ever episode on SoundCloud with some of the Ghanaian community, one of the first ever comments I had was, now the first few seconds of that podcast is the reason why I'm still listening to it. Now, once I got that comment, I knew that we're gonna go somewhere with this podcast. And that's pretty much the story. You know, no lightning bolt moment, no being bit by a spider, just something very simple, and just a idea that I had where I was able to tap into a niche. So I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I hope you guys have been able to take value or been inspired by any episodes, or you shared episode with a friend or family. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and we look forward to what's in store in the future. Thank you.